Welcome to episode 46 of Basics and Beyond, the podcast. Today I have a guest that I'm so excited to introduce you to, and I know you're going to want to continue to follow his journey. His name is Sean Lochran. He is a coach out of Scotland, and we talk functional health, we talk gut health. It's a great conversation. Come on in, get to know Sean. So, Sean, I'm super excited to have you on the podcast today. I can't even tell you how thrilled I am that we have made this happen. And thank you for doing this so late in your evening. I know by 7 o'clock my time, I'm pretty much done. So this is pretty fun for me. Would you do me a favor and introduce yourself in whatever way you think and believe we need to know or we need to hear? Tell us about you.
Uh, so obviously my name's Sean Lochran. I've been doing kind of a online coaching. I'm not a full time as yet. I've been doing it for the past two and a bit years. I think that's around about 8 or 9 months I've been mentoring with Austin. So I first went to him for a consult call for my own issues with IBD. Then obviously just the way he came across, I found out about the IMH, so I started obviously doing the learning, now over into the group kind of a mentorship type things with him. But before that, I was dealing with everything myself, obviously with the IBD, with the hospitals, the doctors, not really getting anywhere. But it's funny now that you learn everything, and then what I know now, if I could go back and fix, I would maybe be in a better position than what I'm in now. And it's not effect on the kind of a hospital system. It's just the system, and that's just the kind of a way it is. But apart from the online coaching, my kind of a more day-to-day type job is managing a shopping centre. So again, when I was going through all my issues with the IBD, I was managing a shopping centre, but nobody knew nothing. I didn't tell anybody anything. So that was all kept in the background.
Gotcha. Okay. So you've had a really interesting health journey yourself. You alluded to that.
Yeah.
Can you talk a little bit more about like the beginnings of it? Was it a long time ago? When did it start? How did you notice it? And kind of that process that you had to go through with your own health.
Yeah, so I mean, forgive me, I might be slightly wrong here, but you know, the first sort of symptoms I got was maybe around about 16, 17 sort of a years ago. I just started with terrible bowel habits. Again, I was a kind of a younger guy then, so you just kind of got on with it and just think it's somewhat normal, even though it's not normal. And you just stay quiet, try and deal with it. But when things started to escalate, that's when I started to get investigated. Back then, it was very taboo in terms of it took like 5 or 6 years to get any sort of diagnosis. That's sort of a lot quicker now, in terms of getting scopes and stuff. But back then it was very rare, so it took a long time before they would even look at that. You would get palmed off with it's just stress, it's IBS, and various things, before they started looking into it. Then when they started checking your bloods and finding out your CRP levels were off the charts, that's when they started to think, right, maybe there was a bit more to it. Fast forwarding on a few years after that, obviously certain treatments, certain medications, biologics, nothing really seemed to help me. Bearing in mind, obviously, I was already in the gym at that point and still continuing to work, be at the gym. I've always ate quite healthily, within that period of time. So I knew it was nothing to do with diet, it was just my body. Um, but eventually, basically, I had to get rushed into hospital and get stomach surgery as well because obviously my large bowel just kind of was giving up on me, and that had to be removed, which has then left me with an ileostomy at the moment.
Okay. So it's interesting that you said it took like 5, 6 years for them to even move off of it's like your issue, your lifestyle, those kinds of things. When you were going through that process with the doctors, were you were you the one kind of pushing this, hey, I'm eating healthy, I'm doing these things. Were you the one kind of doing a lot of self-advocating, or did you just kind of keep going back and back and back like, "Hey, these are just my symptoms." How was that? How did you work with the doctors in that way?
Yeah, so I had to keep pressing them, keep pushing them. But again, because I was somewhat relatively younger there, they thought I was lying when I said that I didn't drink, I didn't smoke, so they thought that all these other things were part of the issue, which it wasn't the case. So I had to keep pressing them to start looking at it more. Eventually, I gave a gastro consultant at the hospital, and then he realised that something was happening. But again, through various tests, and it's funny because I was actually diagnosed with Crohn's and colitis, whereas normally people only have one or the other,
Right.
whereas technically I had a bit of both.
Wow.
Although you could say the colitis is technically away now because the large colon's not there, um, but technically the kind of a remnants of that is still peeking through, as well as obviously the Crohn's side of it.
Mhm. So finally, someone paid attention a little differently. When you were in that position, I think it's important for people to understand that, like you said, right? The medical system is a system, and they
Yeah,
have certain ways of doing things. And to advocate for yourself is extremely important. And even at that young of an age, you were advocating for yourself. Like you weren't just letting it drop and being like, well, this is just how my life is going to be. I'm going to have to deal with all these crazy things, and I'm broken. There's something that I have to fix that I can't figure out. Um, and at the same time, you worked within that system, you were advocating for yourself. How did it feel to keep pushing forward like that? How did you, because you said you were continuing to live your life doing the same things that, you still have to live and do the things and work. Can you talk about what that process felt like for you?
um, I suppose looking back now, it was probably very difficult. And it's obviously more difficult when you've got a partner and a daughter, and you're having to kind of a press on. But you come a point where you need to be self-aware because you put yourself in a box and it's tunnel vision to get through your day and to get through your week and your month. But then you're pushing people away and you're purposely doing it because you don't want to react to them because obviously I was at that point getting about with a sore stomach 24/7. So you can imagine then that that's going to get taken out on people round about me.
Mhm.
So you've got to then become very self-aware, and that's probably what kept me riding and pushing to find out what was actually happening and then what the next steps would be. So I was consistently trialing. Then eventually, when they were trialing me on the medication, then when I felt that it was maybe working, I would let them know. When it wasn't working, I would let them know to try and keep pushing them to change it, to try different things.
Mhm.
But I had to keep pushing. If I wouldn't have done that, you would be left.
Right. Right. And you have a child, and
Yeah,
right, and you have a partner, and you guys, and they were there this whole time. They've been there this whole time
yeah,
supporting. It's
yep,
interesting. It feels I like how you explained it, that you were kind of in a box and you had to be very tunnel visioned about making those things happen, and still had the vision outside of that to say, this isn't just a physical thing. This is also affecting me emotionally, mentally, how I move through my world outside of just the physical part of it.
yeah,
Yeah. When you work with your clients, do you work with them in that way too?
yeah. I think you've got to. I think you've got to look at everything that's happening in their surrounding, and I think it's probably maybe a bit easier for me to look at things and to maybe ask questions that they've maybe not even thought about because I had to ask myself the questions. So when I ask them stuff, sometimes they can't directly give me an answer. They need to think about it because they've never thought about it before. So I think that kind of helps in that sense.
What Tell me more about that. What questions, how do you question them like that? What are those things that you're asking them to think about more deeply?
A lot of the time it's around nutrition. what they want to eat, because you become so rigid, and you narrow foods down to so little that at one point, I could probably name that I was on 4 or 5 foods and I would not sway from them, even though these 4 or 5 foods didn't clear up any of my symptoms. I still I knew in my head that eating them wasn't giving me a reaction, because if I ate something that didn't agree with me, that gave me a reaction, and I knew that was very different from these foods. So I stuck to them even though I was still getting the symptoms. And I think you find a lot of people with kind of autoimmune IBD do that. So they start to remove fibre, fruits, veg, and they bring everything down. But again, the guidance has always been to do that. It's only in recent kind of I'd probably say in the past year, maybe a wee bit more than a year, that they've now come out and said that no, fibre is actually very good. You just need to get a balance of how much that you're taking. Whereas before, back then, it was remove it all, go low residue, everything taken out, low salt, bring everything down, which isn't right.
Hmm. So you went through that process too,
Yeah,
did those things.
yeah.
Um,
So that's why I can relate to these people, because obviously they're doing that, and I can tell them that that's very wrong, and it's a very hard hill to climb then on the opposite way out, because I've done that myself. So it's better to start kind of a climbing back up the hill now before you keep going any further. And in terms of other sort of questions and things that, you get very, very self-aware that when you're going out to social occasions and that you're having to travel distances, you start to think, where is toilets? Where
mhm.
am I going to be? How clean are these toilets going to be? Because all that comes into consideration, because, as much as people don't like to talk about it and it's taboo subject, the last thing for me getting into a toilet is I don't want to be getting into places which isn't very clean, because I've got to think of myself, as much as everybody needs to think about the things, but I think that you've got to be very self-aware, when you have kind of these conditions, it just steps up that wee bit more a mental game, because if you have a bad experience, you're not wanting to go back to that.
Sure. Yeah. It's that that belief around taking away things because it may make us feel bad, or we're not sure how we're going to react to it, kind of um how do I want to say, just reducing everything in our lives to something very, very simple, when it comes from that place of fear, right? People,
Yeah,
and you experience that as like, oh, it's, if I'm going to have a symptom, I don't want to do that. We're going to, and we see that a lot with people, whether they have a major issue or not, is either they're listening to someone else say, remove this whole food group from your life because it's not good, or they've had one experience with it, or a couple, and they completely remove whatever it is because they don't want to have to deal with it. And it sounds like what you have looked at for yourself is, okay, I could do that. However, I'm going to dig in a little bit more and really find out what's going on, because things change. Like you said, the whole fiber conversation is completely different now, right?
yeah,
It's super helpful. So what you are experiencing is an autoimmune
yep,
related condition. So that being a little different than someone who, maybe has a little SIBO going on, or some other kind of gut health issue going on. Um, Symptoms can be similar, right? The
yep,
fears around it, like you talked about traveling. I know, I have a relative who just came back from traveling overseas, and that was a huge concern,
yeah,
was where are the bathrooms? And in the United States, it's a little different because you can walk in pretty much anywhere and find a bathroom. I know over there in the EU, it's a little more challenging.
yeah.
Um, so it can impact a person in a lot of ways. When we're talking about an autoimmune issue, though, what changed for you when you realized, oh, that's what this is? Did something change? What kind of things happened? How did you feel? What went on?
Well, again, obviously that's when I was diagnosed with everything, and they kind of they explained to me in a roundabout way what it was. But again, I felt compelled to go and research it myself to find out exactly what it was, what I was up against, how does it get resolved, or how to mitigate it. And then that's when obviously they were trialing me on all the different kind of medications. But as I said before, none of these medications worked for me. So I tried everything. The only thing that kind of helped me for a period of time was one of the worst things that you can take is prednisolone.
Okay.
So I was on that for a very long time, because it was the only thing that was helping me. But then that then led to adrenal insufficiency. So it's connecting the dots with everything, because the longer you're on some of these types of medications, it causes other issues. So because of the medications and because of what I was dealing with, nobody ever really spoke about anything that we would now look at in the functional side, like as in, has it got dysbiotic? What's happening? Is it worthwhile getting a GI map to see where it's shown? That's not maybe always accurate, but it's given us a further picture of what's happening. None of that was explained, and in the UK, GI maps aren't very well known compared to in the US. In the US, they're probably a bit more known, and people would go for them more compared to UK. Um, but with the medications failing, you know, at one point I was medication free, not trialing anything. Um, Inflammation still sky high, but they were reluctant to give me anything because they couldn't find out what was working. They couldn't find out the core problem. And then ultimately, I believe that's what ended up causing the issue, and then having to get the stoma surgery because everything's compounding. So the inflammation's getting worse. I'm not taking any medication. Nothing's coming down. So there's nothing changing. So it's just getting worse and compounding. And at the time when I had the surgery, I questioned because they sent the large colon away. So I questioned, right, did they find anything with it? And in actual fact, they found H. pylori in it, which again was never tested for.
Wow. And that's something that, as functional health coaches, we know that's
Yeah,
something we can absolutely deal with.
yeah.
How did that make you feel?
Slightly annoyed, and
It's
I
annoying.
suppose that you know, I suppose you think about it and you think, if I would have knew that,
Yeah.
would I had to have that surgery?
Right.
But then in the same token, I asked them the overall picture of the state of the colon, what was it like? And they basically said it was one of the worst ones that they took out. So
Oh,
that makes you think, would it have had to come out anyway? There's always a possibility, and at the end of the day, I'll never know.
sure.
So I now just have to park that at the back of my brain and just move on with what I've got, because now I've got the different cards that I'm dealt with. So I
Yeah.
need to move on because I can't keep obviously thinking about that.
Which is that's a great point to make, right? Yes, we can in a lot of, and I don't know if you have a lot of clients that do this. I do. And I see it in other people. We get so focused on the what ifs, the what ifs, what if. We worry, 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 or we regret, regret, regret. And for you to just go, okay, you asked the question, you got the answer. Maybe to say maybe, but, and it doesn't matter, right? You are where
Yeah.
you are, and you're going to move forward from there. So the medications weren't working.
No, no. So I've been put on kind of the biologics as well to drive the immune system down. Even
Didn't work.
them didn't work. None of it worked. As I said, the only thing that kind of helped me for a period of time was the prednisone. You know, but I couldn't come any lower because I don't know about the US measurements if it's similar to here, but you go up to 40 milligrams, which is 8 tablets, and then over a period of weeks you come down. But I only really got down 2 tablets and then started to feel the effects. So I was always on high dose because I
Sure,
couldn't come in. I couldn't come any lower.
sure. Were they concerned at that point in time that the effects of the prednisone were going to be detrimental to your overall outlook?
They didn't explain things to the extent of what they probably should have. Now that I know more about that type of a drug, but they were watching stuff, as in that they were getting regular blood tests and stuff like that. But I think they would should have maybe gave me a bit more of a heads up and clue me up a bit more on what the effects were, because when I got the adrenal issues, that's when they said, "Oh, this will be connection to this," so they knew that as well at the time.
So you then took it upon yourself to learn all of these things. Like you didn't sit back and go, well, I'm just going to let them do what they do and I'm going to trust them the entire time. You went, okay, I'm going to learn some stuff. Is
Yeah.
that when you is had you been training or coaching? I shouldn't say training. Have you been coaching prior to that, or is that your what was your impetus to get into coaching?
No, it was after the kind of a stoma type surgery. So what led me to think about the coaching was when I was in the hospital. So I was in and out of the hospital for kind of a period of time, and it got to a point where I was in these wards, and this is gastro wards, but they can't cater to your diet, and I'm thinking, you're. I'm in a ward where there's certain things that I can't eat because I'm going to get a reaction. There's other people round about me that's maybe got celiac and stuff, but or they need to be, yeah, gluten free, but they can't cater to their diet, and you're thinking, how can this be that you're in for help in a hospital, but they can't cater to what you require? So like myself, I had my partner bringing me my own food every day.
Oh
So
wow.
she came and brought me my own food for the day, and then the following day, obviously, it would more food would arrive because I wouldn't eat any of their food because I didn't want any sort of a further reaction to anything. But it was on the wards is when I realised that it wasn't the nurse's fault, and it wasn't necessarily the patient's fault. Just a lot of them just didn't really realise how it is. But even speaking to my gastro doctor just now, like sometimes he'll seek advice off of me about nutrition because he doesn't really know much about it. So
That's
that just
amazing.
show so that just shows you that they're looking to you because you know something that they don't. But it also just shows you that they're not big-headed in a sense where they're pushing you away. Whereas I've dealt with normal doctors that would try and look down on you, that you don't know what you're talking about, and try and speak over you, and you've got to advocate for yourself. But I was quite lucky that my gastro kind of a doctor has always said to me, "You know more than them," because a doctor knows basically a small amount about a lot of things. A specialist knows basically a lot about one topic, but not much about anything else. He said, but the difference is that you're learning from me about these conditions, but you're also living this condition, so you can actually teach me. So the more I listen to what you're saying, the more he basically learns as well.
Yeah. It's interesting. I love how you kind of delineated between the GP, the general guy, and the specialist, because that's so true. And neither one is great, but being the person, and I say this to people all the time, like, you know you best, and you're the one in
Yep.
the middle. So I'm so glad you got the gastro that you got. Being able to go, okay, no, 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 no. I can take a little bit from you. I can take a little bit from you. And now I'm going to tell you
Yeah.
how this is affecting me, the things that I've done, the things that I've researched, the things that I know. And we're all so different,
Yep.
right? Like it sounds like for you and your body, you're very different than other people, because I'm sure those doctors, when they started throwing those medications at you, were like, oh, one of these is going to work, because it
Yeah.
always does,
Yep.
right? And it didn't, because you're different. And I'm so glad that they're listening to you. It's interesting, when you were talking, I was remembering I used to live in Minneapolis, Minnesota, and there's a specialized heart hospital there, Abbott Northwestern. They're well known for their cardiac programs, and everybody goes there if they have a heart issue. And you walk in the door, and there's a McDonald's.
That's wild.
I know. And I remember, and it was before. So I've been I was an educator for a long time, a couple decades, but I've always trained people. I've always coached people on the side, kind of thing. And this was well before I chose to do this as a career. And I remember walking in going, that makes no sense to me. Why would we do
Yeah.
that? And then, like you said, right, you kind of you start to go down the rabbit holes and you learn all these things and you start coaching and you start learning and you're like, oh, they have no idea,
Yeah.
which is fascinating to think about because especially when we're talking about immune issues, gastrointestinal issues, and how everything is so connected in our bodies, for them to not know the things that we put into our bodies absolutely affect us
Yep.
doesn't make a lot of sense if you think about it logically.
No, I mean, I suppose there's quite a lot that doesn't make sense because, again, um, I think, the hospital sense wise, they're there to prescribe medication to try and, I don't mean to sound bad, but to try and keep you quiet because they're looking for a medication to work so that then it sort of reduces your symptoms but isn't going to fix stuff. It's like putting a band-aid on you just for you to then stay quiet because it means then you're off their register because you're happy enough basically to live on with whatever's happening. And then I'll see you again in 6 months or a year just to make sure everything's okay in a follow-up. Um, but there's not any real looking at what is the problem and how do we fix it. And I think obviously that some of that comes down to, especially with IBD, they don't necessarily know exactly. They can't confirm exactly how everybody gets it because everybody seems to have different versions of how it's maybe happened. And it's when you start to look back at stuff, because I look back at things from my childhood now and think, that could have been a stem because there's different ways that you can look at it.
Mhm.
But when I was a child, I never thought about it.
Sure. Did you, that's a great question. Did you have, looking back on it, were there indicators as a child that things weren't necessarily in a good spot? Or can you pinpoint some things that may have led to it kind of happening for you? Or was it just like my body was just made this way and it just happened?
I think looking back, the biggest thing that probably put me into my first initial flare would have been high stress environment. Now, when I was younger, when I start to look back at when I got annoyed at school, I could remember then I would go to the toilet and it maybe wouldn't be right.
Yep.
But when I initially think that, it started coming out to me and I started to think, right, something's not right here, but I couldn't calm it down, was basically, for instance, like my work at the time is a high stress environment, it's insecurity. There's a lot happening, there's a lot I need to think about, there's a lot riding on me and my decisions. And I think, that sort of a stress and taking everything on your own shoulders, I think that's what started to cause it. But at the time, I wouldn't have thought I was stressed. But now when I look back on it, I was.
Right.
But again, you don't realise it at the time because you're in the thick of it. It's not until you objectively look, after it and be like, yeah, that was a pretty stressful time.
Yeah. Yeah, like you said, when you're in the thick of it, you're just doing it. It's just happening.
Yeah.
You have to get stuff done. So when does that inform your work with your clients?
Yeah, well, I start to poke to find out, did they have stressors? Did they know, did anything happen? Because again, when you look back in all of this, some of them are dealing with some sort of trauma maybe for years ago that they don't. It's not at the forefront of their mind, but it's on their mind, and it's not until you start to kind of ask these types of questions you find this out, and then when you start to explain that this can be causing downstream issues, then they start to think and go like, oh, that makes sense. But I think then explaining it that way, it allows you to then come in and say, right, this is what we need to do to start trying to mitigate some of this. But then they're more open because you've been able to explain things. I think the biggest thing is that, especially the way things are now, it's a kind of there's not as much trust now. So when you're speaking to kind of newer people who maybe don't know you, I think being able to explain these things in certain ways and relate to them, that they're then more open to the suggestions that you're going to give them. But at the same time, I think sometimes even as a coach, you need to step back and let them make the mistake, so that they then realise that that is a mistake, and they come back being like, "Yeah, you were right. Let's go with your plan."
Mhm. Yeah. The it's interesting that you can go back and kind of look at the stressors and the things that have caused that. And it's interesting because I too talk to people all the time about stress, and I talk about I'm like, we're going to talk about poop. So if you get uncomfortable, that's okay,
Yeah,
right? I had someone talking to me the other day, and I'm like, no, no, you can, it's fine. I don't get uncomfortable with that. It's good.
yeah,
Because that is a great indicator of how we're doing, right?
yeah,
And it's interesting because I don't have children, you do, but people who have children know that that is something you pay close attention to, because if
yep,
that's off, you know something is going on.
yep,
Why is it different when we're adults? Right? It's
yeah,
not different. We need to pay attention to that and to understand. And I talk about this quite a bit. I'm sure you do. Is when you're anxious, when something's going on, when you have a big presentation to do at work, how does like reconnect? How does your stomach feel? Like how do your intestines feel? What like and people will either say, I go to the bathroom and it's craziness, or I get constipated and I can't. It's
yeah,
one or the other, which is interesting to think about because that tells us right there how intricately connected our stress, like mental stress levels are to our gut health and how our gut is responding to things. And it's much easier, like you talked about, it's much easier to just be in the moment and do the thing and not think about it.
yeah,
Yeah. And what I love is it sounds like you help people kind of come back to it and think about it later. What was that thing?
yeah.
How did that feel? Those kinds of things. Is that a huge focus of your coaching?
I would probably say it is, yeah, yeah. I mean, I suppose that for me, I look at everything individual,
Yep.
because everybody needs different things. Because some people do need to just be tunnel vision and not think for a period of time, because we just need to fix what they're doing and then we can look back. Other people can't move forward until we start to look back, and then we start to explain stuff. So it really just depends on them, their nature, their goals, because again, if they're coming to you and they want to lose weight and they're looking for that to happen within a certain period of time, we need to think, right, have we really got time to look back, or do we just push on? And then once we've got that, we can start to then unfold things, or we can start to unpack things as we're moving along. It really just depends on the person.
Is that when you started coaching, was was that a focus? I talked to a lot of people who, and I was one of these people when I started coach, like full-time coaching, more into
Yep.
coaching rather than others. Um, it was like macros, movement, sleep, macros, movement. That was pretty much it. Did you start there and then kind of dig in, or was this
A bit
because
of both. It was mainly that what you're saying, but at the time, I did want to explain to people about IBD and how, it won't stop you from doing what you want to do, but you kind of need to have a level head, and you need to go over the hurdles quickly to basically achieve what you want. So that's how I kind of started, and I was maybe a wee bit more abrupt in my thinking and being like, see, because like I can just park stuff to the side and be like, no, this is what I'm doing, and go. But then I quickly realised that a lot of people can't really do that. They've not got the mind frame. It's a kind of there's certain unique mind frames that you can just box everything off, not think about it, just put your head down and basically do the work. Not everybody's like that. Or I find the majority of people aren't like that. You need to kind of slow things down for them. and explain to them. So I learned that quickly.
Yeah. Yeah, it's an interesting thing working with people on that level,
Yeah,
right?
yeah,
So can you dig more into that? What I love about your journey so far, and I'm sure it will continue this way, is you don't define yourself by your diagnosis.
no,
A lot of people, whether they know it or not, do that. I mean, because it is the first thing they think about, the middle thing they think about, and the last thing they think about. And I'm not saying that's right or wrong or indifferent. I'm saying that's just how it is for a lot of people because it is an overwhelming thing
yeah.
to get a diagnosis like that. Um, can you talk a little bit more about how that works for you? Because that's when I went, getting to know you and, going through social media and seeing the things and listening to what you speak to and how you speak and how you show up in your life, it is very evident that you define yourself in a variety of ways and that thing doesn't define you. So can you talk more about that? I think it's really important.
Yeah, I mean, I think if you let the diagnose define who you are, you're not really going to get much because you're always going to revert back to I've got Crohn's, I've got colitis, I've got a stoma, but none of these things will stop you for doing anything. It might make some things harder, but it doesn't mean that you're not going to be able to do whatever you want to do. Um, and I see it over social media quite a lot where people will have their Instagram profile, but then they'll have, Crohn's fighter, colitis fighter, all this type of thing. And I'm like, this is what's holding you back because you're so focused on your condition. You're not living your life. It's taken over. And I think, like when you speak to some of these people and you try and reframe their mind away from that, they see so much progress because they're so anxious and stressed, and that's why they define themselves by the condition. That when you remove that from them, it's like straight up. As soon as you can break down that barrier, it's like it's night and day difference.
So helping you help your clients to redefine who they are
Yeah,
and take some of that stress and anxiety away.
yeah. Because I think if they hold on to their condition, the stress and anxiety it's always going to be there. So the only way to kind of get that away is by breaking it down. That's not to say that they can't still say to people they've whatever condition that they've got. That's not the issue. The issue is them holding on to onto that. And like I'll come back to like when I was saying about the kind of a social events. They would say no, I can't. I've got IBD. I can't go out because I can't eat the food there, or I can't do this, or I can't do that. Right, well, I'm pretty sure there's a lot on that menu you can't eat, but I'm pretty sure we can find something that you can eat and you can go out and enjoy it. There'll be something there. So what some of my clients have done in the past and what they still do is if they're going out and they're maybe feeling anxious, they'll tell me where they're going, and I'll either look online at the menu or they'll send me the menu. And I would say this is your safer options, this is your medium options, and this is the ones that I would avoid.
Mhm. And give them the opportunity to make a decision, right?
Yeah.
So
I'll,
still giving them agency over their life and their choices.
yeah.
Do you feel like people come to you, like your clients come to you feeling like they don't have any control at all?
Yeah, a lot of the time they think that because they're in such a bad way, sometimes they think that that's just it. Um, and I've probably realised that a lot of the people that I would speak to, that I'm not the first person that they've spoke to. They've maybe had a previous coach, which has given them a previous bad experience, or they've had a bad doctor, a bad, GI person at the hospital who's not given them any confidence. They've not shown them anything that they can do. And I think sometimes that maybe the way I come across and speak to them and kind of I find out their angle like when I'm on a call with them, I find out where their mind's at, and then I try and kind of reframe it then and there. And I think that hits them quite hard at the start because when they start to open their eyes to stuff, but I can quickly obviously come round to that because again I've been through it. So I know exactly where they're coming from. So I'm quick off the mark that once I find out their take on it, I can quickly reframe it, just because I've been through it.
Mm-hmm. Sounds like people come with that sense of chaos, that sense of I have no control, that sense of this is just my life is just going to be terrible and I just have to listen to what other people tell me. And you have the ability, because like you said, you've been there, you've done the things, you have the ability to show them it can be different. It's like you're
Yeah.
giving them their life back. Does it feel that way sometimes?
Um, I suppose it does, aye. Especially when they're reporting that they're feeling far better. You know, to me, there's kind of a no better feeling for the coaching is when somebody's starting to feel a lot better. Or for instance, some people might be in a bad flare and they come to me and they're on prednisone. Now, it's not within my remit to tell them not to take that drug, but they believe because they get the moon face, weight starts to go on that they can't lose weight. So I actually like a lot of the times that I've had quite a lot of people that are on that, and I've had them drop weight whilst on that,
Mhm.
and straight away that reframes their mind because their mind's blown because that's known as the drug that pounds weight on you and you can't get it back off.
Right.
So whilst they're on that, if you're able to get their weight down straight away, that shows them that you know what you're kind of talking about, and then they're more likely to follow the plan and give you more feedback,
Mhm.
and that's what you're looking for because you can only help them as much as the feedback that they're giving you.
Sure.
That's
Absolutely.
that's what I learned very quickly at the start.
Yeah, definitely. You've gone through a lot. You've
Yeah.
gone through a lot. And still going through it. Like still, it's always a journey, right? You're still making progress, you're still doing the things. What is what is the thing that you would characterize as your biggest learning from all of this? Like what have you taken away from this that you're like, I apply this every single day?
Um, I think, one of the biggest things that I say to everybody is control what you can, and what you can't control, try and not worry about it because the stress of trying to control something that you can't is going to cause far more issues. Now, I can say that now. A few years ago, I wouldn't be saying that because I was living that, I was in that. I was trying to control stuff that I couldn't, and when I couldn't control it, it was making me out of control because I was trying to control it, so it
Just
was like
like
a roundabout. It was like a roundabout, and I wasn't getting off. So I get where people come from when they're like that, but I
yeah.
also know that you need to go off. You need to go off and deal with it.
So when that happens, what do you do when that happens to you? How do you get off that roundabout?
I think, you need to look at it objectively and think about, what is the thing that you're trying to control,
Mm.
and then realize that is there actually any possibility of you controlling it? Is there anything within your power that you can do to control it? And see if there's not, it's out your control.
Mhm.
Look at what you can do day to day because I think a lot of people, especially with autoimmune, is they're looking for the next best thing that's going to fix them and it's going to fix them quickly. You know, I think they're very easily that if a doctor says, right, oh, try this new medication, this has just come out, I think this will work, straight away they'll go for it because they're looking for something that's going to fix them like that. But the basics work and they neglect the basics because they're looking for a magic pill or a magic potion that's going to fix them straight away. And that's just not how things work.
Mhm. Man, you're speaking my language. Yeah, definitely. It is an interesting thing to see that I mean, don't we all do that at times? We're looking for that
Yeah.
next magical thing so we can hit
Yep.
the easy button. And the easy button really is the foundational basic things that we can do every day. And that's what we really have control over.
Yep.
I was just saying that this morning. I don't know where or when because it's been a busy day, but I was at a meeting and somebody said something, and I said, whatever it was, I just said, and every choice you make every day contributes to that. And those are the only things you have control over, right? Is the choices that you make every day. And I think that's really important. And I love that um asking you that question is like, is there a one, two, and three? These are the top three things you should do. And you're like, nope. Right away, you're like, control what you can control. And in order to do that, you have to take some time to be reflective,
Yeah,
really reconnect with yourself and ask yourself the questions. Is this something that I do have any control over, or is it not? And if it's not, go back and find those things that you do. Am I drinking my water? Am I getting my movement in? Am I sleeping well? Right? Am I eating foods that my body can use? Right?
yeah.
Those are important things. Just the basics and the foundation. I love that. I love that. That's great.
And the sleep's probably one of the biggest things that I pay attention to, because again, I tend to find, and I went through periods of that, years ago where, especially also with IBD, the sleep becomes a problem because a lot of the times you get a lot of bowel movements during the night. So
Okay.
when you get to a certain time of night, I could line up 10 people with IBD and I could probably guarantee you about 7 out of 10 of the people, anywhere between 2 and 4 in the morning, you will be up for the toilet.
And
You
it's in
know,
that time frame.
yeah, yeah, yeah. I could guarantee that would happen. So you've got to look at your sleep then, because obviously we need to fix the sleep, but we also need to look at what you're eating prior to bed. Is there anything we can do that maybe might mitigate that, or not make it so intense? So the stuff like that we need to kind of have a look at as well, because sleep, I didn't realise, obviously years ago I worked a lot of night shifts,
Mhm.
and I thought because I could sleep maybe 3 hours, get up and be fine and just go about my day. So I
Oh,
thought that was
for
that
sure.
was fine. I just go on with it. Bearing in mind I'd get up, eat some, go to the gym, go and train, and then just go about my day and just thought, ah, it's
Yeah.
fine. Now I don't know how I done that, but I think that's part of what my compounding problems were at the time,
Sure.
because obviously none of the medications were working, but I was doing daft stuff like that as well. So I wasn't looking after the basics, because although I was into the gym at that point, nobody truly explained to me about the basics of that,
Mm-hmm.
if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
So now I can objectively look back at that, and this is what I always try to explain to people, that sleep is one of the best things that we've got there. We should be protect at all times.
And it's the one, it's like you said, the one thing people go, oh, like you hear this a lot, at least we do over here. I'll sleep when I'm dead. Like, how fast do you want to be dead? Because you need,
Yeah,
right? You need your sleep.
yeah,
That's so interesting. And that's the first thing people give up on is like, oh, I got to get to the gym. So even though I stayed up till 1 in the morning, I'm going to get up at 4. I'm going to
yeah,
hit the gym. Also interesting to me, and I want your take on this, that 2 to 4 a.m. time frame is generally where we'll see even people without autoimmune issues, like women in particular that I work with. I work with a lot of women of a
yep,
certain age. 2 to 4 is when they'll have most of their wake ups.
yeah.
And a lot of the time it's stress related. It's they're going through their head, they have a list of things, they're trying to fix the world, they're doing all these things. What do you think of that in terms of like I didn't know that about IBD that happens. What talk a little bit about more about why you think that happens at that time frame. I think that's interesting. Or don't you or isn't it something that is there a correlation, a causation? I mean, have you ever thought about that?
I mean, the thing I think about the most is that's probably when you're, for a lot of people, would be at their deepest sleep. Because if you go to bed at a certain time, that's probably maybe halfway through your sleep kind of a time.
Mhm.
So that's probably when you would be at your deeper sleep. So everything relaxes, and I think when everything relaxes, that's when you feel like you need the toilet. So it wakes you up.
Sure, sure, sure.
I could be totally wrong on that, but that's just what I've thought about over the years, and that's why it's always within that sort of a time period, is it? And again, but I think sometimes it depends on how close you eat to bed, because again, years ago nobody really ever told me anything, so I would eat straight to bed
Right, right.
instead of waiting a while to let it digest as well. So I think there's different things, and as you said, some people are scrolling their phone right to before bed, so their mind's going, kind of a ten a penny. And then it's always been round about that time. It was the same for me, and for most people I speak to, it's always round about that time.
Wow.
So I've not got a conclusive sort of answer, but
Yeah.
there's varying things in my mind that why it could be.
Sure. Right. And like we talked about, everybody's different. It could be a variety of things, but it seems as though that time frame is a really interesting time frame.
Yeah,
And you have strategies that you can employ with certain people and help them out that way.
yeah. To try and help them. Yeah,
So how is life for you now? Obviously you still have a full-time job and a part-time job, which, your part-time job is very mentally taxing, right? Working with people.
yeah,
Your full-time job is obviously stressful because you're managing an entire system.
yep.
Um, how are things going now, especially now that you're like in the IMH system, learning a whole bunch of things, doing all that?
Yeah, I mean, all good. I'm probably at a point now, um, like with IBD stuff for myself. It's mostly settled, and obviously I've been able to do that without the kind of a mainstream medication. Obviously I got GI maps and started targeting some things that come off the GI map. Um, but I'm at a point now where obviously because I've not got a large colon, I've got the stoma. It's not perfect, my digestion, but I've got to objectively look at it. And this is what I was talking to Austin a couple of weeks ago about. It's like I don't know if I'm pushing for that extra few percent and it's not there because the large colon's not there.
Oh, okay.
So I don't know if it's just this is just the best it can be,
Mhm.
and this is what I'm trying to. I don't want to push myself over the edge by trying to fix it, and then I make myself worse, if that makes sense. So I'm kind of on that rope where I'm walking along it finally, just making sure and pushing for it. But it's far better than what it's been. Um, and I know that through my own body just now because I'm quite deep into a diet at the moment. And my body's running far better than it has the past few years. So that tells me that
Challenging place to be for anyone,
yeah,
let alone having those kinds of issues on the sidelines. That's amazing. So you're finding what you're doing for yourself outside of medications and things, the kind of medical system is
yeah.
actually, you're actually feeling 100 times better.
Yeah, well, I mean, as I said, my CRP was off the charts. It was the highest it could be. The UK show, but that's a way down now. So I'm kind of in a normal range, which has never been the case. And it wasn't until I partnered up with Austin and we started going back and forth looking at things,
Yeah.
but we managed to bring that down.
So your inflammation is down.
Yep.
How is that impacting other areas other than your IBD? Are you noticing it any other ways?
Um, yeah, I mean, my day to day, I'm not as annoyed sometimes, because obviously when inflammation's up, your bowel habits are up, it starts to irritate you a wee bit. I don't really think about things like that now. I suppose the main thing for me is just where I'm on that line is the kind of a fibre ratios and trying to bring up something because it's like when I got the GI map done, my Akkermansia was pretty much tanked. So
Oh,
it's trying to bring that up, but I'm obviously got to watch and how I bring that up. And obviously I don't do too well with fats, so my fats are pretty low. Um, Again, but it's surprising on the GI map that it didn't actually show that I've got kind of issues with fats. So I shouldn't really, but I know myself I do. But funnily enough, also because I've got the Crohn's, you tend to find a lot of people with Crohn's do struggle with fats.
mhm,
And a lot of them especially deal with bile acid malabsorption. So
mhm,
it's quite common within Crohn's. So again, the UK doesn't really do a test to diagnose that. In actual fact, my GI doctor says that that's not a possibility because I've got a large colon, which that's not the case at all.
right.
But again, everything's managed. I'm feeling far better. So I'm
Good.
trying not to go down the rabbit holes of the small things. I'm just trying to push on.
Yeah. Like you said, getting into those rabbit holes. And I mean, there's that fine line of getting 2%, 5% better and focusing too much on it. And then
Yeah,
we get into that stress roundabout thing and it can be detrimental. So, man, you are so inspiring. This is amazing. And it's been a really tough road, right?
yeah,
Yeah, you've had some interesting things that you're still dealing with, but man, look at how amazing you feel. I think that is such a huge thing for people to pay attention to is that, like we talked about, your diagnosis doesn't define you. And it also doesn't mean everything is dire and detrimental.
yeah,
Like you're living a great life. You're helping people, you're feeling better. There are things, and sometimes it just takes getting out of the cycle of pill, shot, whatever, the next new shiny thing that comes along, and just sitting back and saying, where am I with my basics? Where am I with my foundational things? Because the body's an amazing machine, right?
yeah,
It can do amazing things to help us. And you're paying attention to that and learning from that and helping others pay attention and to learn. And that I think is, for me anyway, that's why I'm a coach, is because I want people to feel better. I want people to know that they can feel better
yeah.
without all the craziness.
Yeah,
You
it's the same with me as well. That's why I always look to try and connect the dots because, again, part of like my IBD situation has actually ended up with three major blood clots as well. So I'm actually on blood thinners as well, and it was all linked back to the gut. Um, but again, none of this was ever explained to me, or said. So it's just funny how everything interlinks from the gut. Whereas a
Mhm,
lot of people I don't think actually really realise that or pay enough attention to
mhm.
it. And it's not until you've had a gut issue then you start to pay attention to everything.
Yeah. Gosh darn it, you're speaking, oh my gosh, we are so similar. People who, you'll have people, and you said this earlier, I just want to lose 10 pounds or 15 pounds or 20 pounds and I'm stuck and I don't know why, and this and that, whatever. And it's like, if we can address those issues, because everybody has a gut issue. Everybody does. That's just how it is. It's just to the degree of gut issue you have,
Yep,
how much it's impacting you, and the things we need to do to help you and help it be better. And
yep,
sometimes it's like, right? Sometimes it's just, let's modify your food diet. Let's give you some more diversity. Let's make sure your micronutrients are in a good spot. And let's, like you said, let's see where you're having some malabsorption or things just aren't working well. And let's move those things around. Sometimes
yep,
sometimes it's sleep. Sometimes it's those easy things. And sometimes we have to do a little more deeper protocol to figure it out. But it's if we start and we leave it at, I just want to lose 10 pounds, and we're very surface level about that and never go deeper than that, we're just not going to get there. And
yeah,
I
it's
love
not
what
going to
you
work
brought
out.
up too. I mean, you can't go at someone like that the second you meet them, right?
Yeah,
Everybody, you have to find your way to those conversations and see if people are ready for it, because some people just aren't, and that's
yeah,
okay too. But man, you have done a ton of work for yourself. That's fantastic. Fantastic. I love the work that you're doing with other people too. I think it's really, really important for everyone to think about, we're all somewhere on that continuum. And it doesn't mean that we aren't going to go farther down the continuum, right? Like,
yeah,
we have to deal with our stress. We have to deal with all of these things, because that is something that we do have some control over.
yeah.
Yeah.
So I said, I think we just need to look at things objectively, and break everything down. And I think, as coaches, for kind of a normal people that can't do that, I think that's where we obviously can step in and do that for them. We just need to be asking the right questions and hopefully they give us the information because, I'm sure you've dealt with before is some people are a bit more reserved and you need to kind of tease the information out them. But once you've got it out them and you start to explain things to them, I think then they become a bit more open with kind of talking about stuff, especially when it comes to kind of our toilet habits. with adults. I feel as if females are a bit more open than guys. I think guys are a bit more reserved in the kind of telling you the toilet habits. Um, but again, once you start to find these things out, you can start to help a lot better.
Absolutely. Yeah. That communication and connection piece is so, so important. And that, and we have to say it. And I talk about it probably way too much, but that's something AI is not going to give you.
No,
It's
no, not
not
at all.
going to give you. And that's what I think that's what you're saying too, is that's what you got to love about coaching is someone can meet you right where you're at and help you to think about things differently and draw things out and have those conversations and build that trust and that connection. And that's the
Yeah,
important part. I love it. I love
yeah. I
it.
think
Go
I
ahead.
think I think the thing with AI is that it can give you information, but it can't give you your specific information. And I think this is where we come in as coaches to connect the dots on the information that we're given. Because you can put all that in AI, but it's not going to give you anywhere accurate or explain enough the way that we could do that.
Yeah. It'll give you macros, but are they right for you where you're
Yeah.
at, what you're doing? Yeah, absolutely. I love it. I love it. It's amazing. Hey, Sean, tell everybody where they can find you because your information is, I love how you explain things, how you talk about things, and you're really genuine and authentic. I try to promote people who are genuine and authentic because you've lived it, you're still living it, you understand it, and you really care about people. So tell everybody how and where they can find you to learn more.
Yeah, so the best place to get me just now is on Instagram. It's just at Sean Lochran Coaching. Um, I'm actually going to be starting my own podcast in the next week or two, which will be the Functional Health podcast. So I'll be promoting that shortly as well.
Oh, that'll be awesome in a couple of weeks. So you're getting everything set up and ready to go.
Yeah, pretty much, yeah.
That's fantastic. Are you going to promote it on all platforms like Apple, Spotify?
Yeah, I'll be looking to, yeah, and then I'll probably branch into YouTube then because I've not really done anything in YouTube up until now, so I'll start doing stuff on there because I think sometimes with the short form stuff on Instagram, it's hard to get your kind of a point across. Whereas, I like podcasts. I've been on a couple of podcasts now. You can explain things better. People can get a better understanding of who you are, how you can go about things. So I think maybe more kind of a long form type stuff on YouTube will maybe help people as well, where I can break things down and maybe explain it a bit better for people to take in.
Love it. Love it. That's exciting. I love that. Well, thank you so much for coming on. I appreciate you. Everybody, I just want you to know that I will list everywhere you can find Sean in the bio here so that you can see it. And hopefully I would love to have you back on. I think it would be fantastic to continue the conversation.
Yeah, that'd be great. Be good to have you on my podcast when it starts as well.
I would love it. I love talking fun stuff. Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely.